Okay, go ahead, introduce yourself, who you are, who you help, what you do.
Sure. So I'm Tara McCullam, and I have a certification called the Art of Being. Really, the work that I do is all supporting women coming back to themselves. So it's self-development work. But the main goal that I always get to is in relationship building, because there's a lot of areas at the moment where it's all about the self, and that is wonderful, and it can translate to better relationships, but oftentimes it doesn't, because relationships, it's its own tool, it's its own art. And you need to have skills, whether it's with a partner, with your kids, or whether it's with people at work, to be able to hear them, to build bonds and bridges over situations where you both don't agree, or just have different personalities. So I do a lot with relationship building. Um, and so I work mainly with women, and then I also work with a lot of teens and 20 somethings. So that emerging woman.
I'm curious how you got into doing what you're doing.
So, gosh, I was working, and a few of my colleagues said, I think you should look into life coaching. This is probably 16 or 17 years ago. And when I started researching it, I was like, no, this is just not for me. And then I eventually went into a group that was all about like energy and light bodies, and it was much more personal and also esoteric, and so that really drew me in. But the main reason is because I tended to be the glue that kept my colleagues working together and kept success happening, and then I would do that in different areas of my life. I was kind of the bridge that allowed somebody's words to be translated to someone else, that they could hear it in a way that actually created um, bonding instead of people on opposite sides. So that was what was showing up in my life, that people said I should go and do it.
That is totally amazing. And that's also part of the work that I do is bringing people together whom probably would not have otherwise met through networking. So that's a big part of my mission and my focus because it helps you achieve so many other goals that you can achieve by yourself. So that's kind of a big deal.
Mhm.
So, have you invested in yourself in terms of learning coaching or in terms of networking groups?
Absolutely. So I've taken quite a few certifications, all the way from the School of Metaphysics to Law of Attraction and many others. I will say that I, in the end, really listened to spirit and developed my own certification, because so many certifications are based, especially spiritual ones, are based on like cutting cords, boundaries. It's a lot of separation. So even boundaries are fantastic if you're about to walk away, but to really create boundaries with somebody that you love is difficult. And I'm a huge one about words. Um, Removing boundaries doesn't mean you don't have a yes and a no. Like it changes it from them, it being about them, as boundaries really is all about the other person, and moving it to honoring. And honoring is all about really knowing yourself and being willing to follow the yes and no, and asking for that yes and no to not just bless you, but to bless everyone else. And in that way, you get to stay in relationship. And so I would say certifications have been key for me for learning my own modality. Networking, I have invested in it throughout, and I'm in several networking groups. And I think that, when you talk about networking, I think it's really important. You talked about the power of doing it with others, and it makes us have more momentum. There's more energy around it. There's more celebration. You don't feel so lonely. The power of we is huge. And especially since the Pluto moved into Aquarius, Like we're in the energy of the collective, we're in the energy of connection and community. And so if we're not playing to the energies of the universe, like it's not going to work as well for us. So we really need to adopt new ways and really get into networking in a way that can create more movement and excitement and fun.
I'm just curious if you ever went through a period of your life where you were more of a hermit, where you had like cut a lot of connections and backed away.
I would still say I'm a hermit. I love my alone time. Like I thrive in silence. So even though I have, a family and a dog, like I really, really love silent time, and alone time. So hermit is probably my natural state of being, but we all need networking. I definitely know that there's been times where I didn't know how to network in a way that honored who I am as a person because I'm not a social butterfly. And so I really had to do networking very differently, whether it's going to an in-person one or doing it online. So, and how I do it different is like if I'm going to an in-person networking, before I go in, I do this energetic process. It's a muse method. It's like literally just connecting to my own energy. So it's loud enough for me to hear. So I'm not going in empty of myself. And then I look for people intuitively that would match my vibe or that I would feel safe being around. Because especially if you're somebody who's highly introverted, some of these extroverted events can make you feel unsafe. And so I always looked for people who felt safe. And then I would go in being myself, which is in my natural life, it's a listener. So I really love to listen and allow somebody to share with me. And then when they invite me into sharing about myself, that's when I open up because before that, they're not listening anyway. So I'm quite happy to not waste my breath. So that's how I do it when it's an in-person one. And then if it's an online one, I show up and I listen in the group, but I always gravitate to any online networking that showcases ways of like going into separate rooms and having one-on-ones. That's where the magic happens. That's when you really get to know the person beyond the business. So,
Yeah, it's so interesting because I was going to ask you like introvert, extrovert, and then like do you prefer groups or one-on-ones? And you've already just like answered those things. I don't even think I sent you questions.
no, you didn't send me any questions. Yeah, it's a big deal for me to know how I can thrive networking because eh, as somebody is like who's introverted and who can be really happy on her own, like I needed to find ways for it to feel good to me. And so I really had to analyze like what would work best and then find places that allow for that. Like, an extrovert and an introvert may have very different needs when it comes to networking. So, yeah.
I'm kind of an ambivert myself, so
Mm, nice.
how has the way that you network changed over time?
Well, I would say networking has changed over time. I used
Yeah, definitely.
pre-COVID, I did a lot of in-person networking, and then even those groups are now online. I miss some of the in-person networking just because there is a different sense. Like I can pick up people's energy anywhere, but there's just a different thing when you're like really immersed in a pile of people, right? And so I miss that a little bit. So I'm looking for some in-person ones. But I also love the fact that a lot of networking has gone online because it honors my time. I don't have that drive time and I can leave if I need to leave. Like sometimes it goes over and it's like, okay, I can move on to a client or move on to whatever I have in my day. And I get to know people all over the world. I'm in some networking groups that there's people from Sweden, there's people from Poland, and, from the different coasts of America, Canada. Like, so it's allowed me to have clients that are all over the world as well as friends.
So have you found a lot of clients directly from networking or more from doing the collaborations from networking?
The in-person networking that I did, I found a ton of clients. I would say the online, it doesn't translate as quickly for me, but I've network with a lot of people that I also used to work with, and they do a lot of referrals for me. So that, and then collaborations, um, I've been burnt in collaborations in the past. And so for a long time, I didn't collaborate with anyone. I think that there needs to be clear dynamics that are written out, as to how each person benefits, how people are showing up. But also at the time, I was not as tapped into energy as I am now. So I was like saying yes to everything instead of really asking, if I do a collaboration with this person, will it benefit both of us? Will it benefit me? Will it benefit my clients, like, or even my future clients? Or is this only benefiting them? So the collaborations that I have now, gosh, yes, I do. I never even thought about it, Lori. Like, I definitely do get clients from it. But I think like the collaborations are so easeful these days. Like, I don't even, like, I go in to create something and it just happens. So yes.
Yeah, a lot of reflect and refine on that over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
So, how do you set time boundaries in your relationships so that you don't fall into that people pleasing?
Gosh, so again, like, I'm not a boundary person. I'm a person that, like, I really am so deeply connected to my body's abilities to say yes or no. And so, because I find that if I create a boundary with myself, then I feel like I'm failing if I walk over that line or it needs to change. And so I just don't create boundaries. I'm constantly connected to myself because things are always changing. And so, I value my relationships. We spend time together. Like, gosh, I don't know. I just feel like my life works because I love the people that are in my life. I value them, and I also value my work. And so both things just coexist pretty beautifully. And like we were talking about earlier, like I create my schedule. Generally, I front load in the month. I don't schedule groups at the end of the month. To me, that's just, it's honoring space. I love having space where there might not be anything, where I can fill it with fun, or if new clients come into my world, I know that there's a space that I can pop them in for new conversations. So I do a lot of the things from just honoring how my system works. Yeah.
So, I know you're very intuitive. So, how is that different than like emotions for you?
Yeah. Well, emotions are one of the biggest things that I teach about, and that, they're not just meant to be felt, and, they aren't just energy and motion, like, they have messages. So I think that they are connected. My emotions give me a lot of messages, and in human design, I'm an emotional authority. So, somebody like my friend Gina, who's sacral authority, and like she gets the instant answers. I do have instant knowings. Like, when I'm with a client, it's not based on emotion. Like, my emotions are not the messaging system. It's really from a space of energetic channeling. I don't know that I'm answering your question, but um, I think they're all tied together, and it's not always easy to completely separate them, because I do believe that intuition comes through emotion sometimes. Sometimes emotions are their own thing. But it's really important to just listen in and ask yourself the questions. I think the other question it is this really from me? Or is this something that I'm picking up from the other person and feeling like it's mine? And so that's been huge for me, not in my work, because it's wild when I show up with a client, I can really clearly see this is theirs, it's not mine. But let's say somebody invites me to something, right? And they're all excited about it. And like I'm like, oh, I'm all excited about it. And I've learned not to say yes while I'm in their presence. I move out of the space, tap into my intuition in that place. Like, is this actually really for me? Does this still excite me? Because when I didn't do that, I would find like I'd be out to lunch. I remember a particular lunch where I was with someone and she talked about something and I was like all on board. And I literally was walking to my car and this just heaviness in my stomach set in. And I was like, what did I just say yes to? That is not for me because I got out of her energy and I could feel my own intuition. So I tend to walk away before I say yes. So whether it's on the phone with somebody who's offering something to me, and that whole old marketing adage, like make him sad, like bring up the pain points, it's like if you can't let me off the phone to make a choice where I can tap into my own intuition, it's a real hell no, right? It's a no because first of all, you're fear-based and I don't need to be doing that. And I have done it. And then I've had to like recover. I've done whole 6 month long programs with people who that's where it started. And then I had to recover and like come back to myself after the 6 months because it was leading me away from the ways that I worked. So yeah, I pause, tap in, same thing with emotions, let them just settle down a little bit and then ask them. I feel like emotions are their own entity. It has a voice. So if you ask it questions, you're going to gain wisdom.
I love how you separated them out and talked about the picking up on other people's emotions because for a while that was something that I did a lot of. And then I'm like, these aren't mine.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's true, like on sales calls, people try to get you into that, like, buy it now because, you're feeling that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And a lot of times you're feeling their feeling of excitement and they're feeling that this has worked for them or worked for other people, but you need to really tap in and make sure that it will work for you because there's a lot of really good things out there, but not all of them are for us and not all of them will work for us. Yeah,
even if they work for somebody else who bought the
absolutely.
same thing and got amazing results in there, it doesn't mean it's for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree.
So, would you say getting comfortable being uncomfortable is part of the entrepreneur skill set?
100%. 100%. Like when people talk about like they need to move fear first, I'm like, if you don't learn to walk with fear, like be hand in hand with fear, first of all, you're never going to be able to be an entrepreneur because every day has its own fear, especially if you're up leveling. Like living in fear and not being afraid of it, like it's the walking forward with it that translates or transforms it into bravery, into choice. It transforms it into bonds with other people for sure. And I mean, going back to the question about hermit, I wouldn't show up even today if like I wasn't willing to walk with a bit of fear or uncomfortability, right? Like it's not comfortable for me to always get on lives and to talk. But it's like once you're there, you're bonded to the other person and it makes it easy and it's worth it, right? It's just worth it to be able to have a conversation with somebody and to reach other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always doing things that aren't comfortable
Mm-hmm.
initially. And then when I do, then I'm like, yay, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's moving through that discomfort and understanding that it's not the same thing as being unaligned.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you use DMs on Facebook? Is there like a certain point where you take the conversation to the DMs or do you just kind of intuitively like lean into that or like what's your process for that? Because I know that's something that a lot of people don't like to get the spammy sales DMs, but they're also like a great place to connect with people, to do collaborations, to start those deeper conversations that you might not want to do in a big group. So I'm just curious what your take on that is.
Yeah, I agree with everybody about, I don't love the spammy ones. And spammy still includes, I checked out your page and you do wonderful things, and then immediately going into the sale, I'm like, you really didn't get to know me. I'm so huge on relationship that if you haven't built a relationship with me first, whatever you got to say after that, like after not getting to know me and then offering something, it's a no. So I'm the same way. Like I'm all about fostering relationships. So intuitively, 100%, it's intuitively. Also, in general, because of my human design and because it works knowing this, like I wait for the invitation. I wait for somebody generally to say, I feel something with you. Can we go offline and have a conversation, whether it's in DM or have a coffee chat or jump on Zoom? Um, there's a rare occasion where I will say to somebody, hey, let's move to the Zoom, but I also post in a way that has people asking me, and then I like, if they're asking me something, I will take it to the DM and just say that. And so I'm going to make another point to this because it's so funny. I did a post, um, and people were asking me for information, and I said to all of them, it was 137 people, and I said, I'm going to take this to the DM, like check your DMs. And somebody got so mad, and she was like, why can't you just post it in the comments? Like, just post it. Like, why do you got to do this? It's just so sleazy. And I understood her thing. Like, if we're a transaction world, absolutely. Let's just put it down there and people can make their decision. I'm not in a transaction world. Like, actually, of those 137, I don't want any of them to say yes unless there's a relationship built. So I take it to the DMs because I actually care about that person. I want to get to know them. I want them to get to know me. Also, posts are easily lost. So for them and for me, you're not going to lose your message from me. So if you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to go back to that person, there's the information they sent you that's personal to you. So I personally believe that the energy and intention behind going to the DMs is huge. And it's all to me about building trusting relationships and kind of letting people get to know me. And then also asking people to take a next step. And so it's like, if you don't want to take a next step, that's fine. But choosing to do that in front of thousands of people in a networking group is so different from choosing to do it in a personal DM space. Like, I'm going to give you the personal choice to ask me questions that you wouldn't otherwise. And those of those 137 people, I want to say 100 of them I wasn't friends with on Facebook. So like they might not feel comfortable DMing me. So like I'm going to start the conversation because they asked for more information. So yeah, I'm really careful. Like I want everybody to like kind of leave with a good taste in their mouth after having an interaction with me, and not feel like they were just a transaction.
Yeah, I love that insight into how you do things because there's more than one way to do this, obviously, depending on what you do and how you help people and your audience and all of that. So I just really appreciate you sharing your insight.
Thanks. Yeah, it's what works for me. I love the fact that there's different ways that people do it.
So, any closing remarks or things that you want to add?
I would say, how do you like, what do you like about networking? Because this is your area of genius. So what is it that you like about networking that made you want to make this your career?
That's the interesting thing. I did not always like networking. There
Mhm.
was a time when I didn't like it, when I really, I remember when I was like young in my 20s, and I was married to my toxic ex, and I made this cartoon of like, not liking people and just really, wanting to be that hermit and just avoid people because I had some negative experiences as a teenager. And so I kind of carried that into adulthood. And so I had relationships, but they were very surface level. And I didn't pursue the networking. I just kind of relied on my now ex.
Mhm.
When he left, that was really no longer viable. So it wasn't a case of I suddenly love networking. It was something that I had to like learn all over again to love because like prior to becoming a teenager, like I enjoyed like when I had parties and stuff and the other kids, but like, teenager, stuff happens. You go through people go through those stages and you know, it's not the same. And so as an adult, you're not stuck with like whoever, like, your job or where you live or like any of those other things that you are as a young person. So like the whole way I thought about networking, it's like I have to change how I
Mhm.
think about networking and how I think about connecting with people. And what's interesting is I didn't even know what that was going to look like. I had to do it even though I didn't like it, even though I didn't know how to do it, and just like, okay, just like start from scratch and like do this, like just do it like regardless of my feelings, which
Mhm.
by that point I was very adept at ignoring my feelings, so like just do the thing. So, you know, I think the biggest shift for me that I had like immediately though was it's okay if the relationship doesn't stay, or it's okay to mess up, or it's okay to make a bad first impression, or it's okay if somebody doesn't like you. And like that mindset shift was like really huge for me, like that it's okay to mess up. And
Mhm.
so and then I started making connections with people who I probably would not have. And I deliberately started networking in a way so actually people said negative things about like a certain group of people or something, I would say, okay, maybe I need to meet more of those people. And I kind of did that like in a sequence, like in a series of like doing that. So, you know, just trying out different groups. So like every group that I networked in, long term, some of those early groups and stuff I didn't stay with because it
Mhm.
wasn't really a fit, but I was open to the trial and to the error and to doing all of that, which, sometimes I know like in some industries it's very easy to just like sit around and like hang out with other experts. But if you want to help people, you want to help people who have different expertise than you. So you
Mhm.
want to meet people who know about topics you don't know about and who
Mhm.
you can help them because you know about stuff they don't know anything about. So,
Right, absolutely.
because, when you meet somebody different, you can be mutually beneficial just because you have those different perspectives and those different skill sets and different upbringings, just totally different views that can actually be super helpful,
Mhm.
especially when you're stuck and think like, oh, this way is the only way.
Mhm.
But when you get out of that, then it just opens you up to all of these possibilities. So I got into networking because I knew that the people I wanted to help the most needed networking, not because initially I was super excited about networking. But like, it's interesting though, the more I do it, the more excited I get about it. So like every time I host an event, it's kind of like a little mini party, like a mini thing, like, oh, like we can talk about these topics and I'm hosting this thing. And like, it's fun to do these interviews. And it's like the more I do it, the more I've kind of found more what I do like.
Mhm.
But that comes from trial and error and being okay with the fact that everything was not amazing. And then I made errors too, like initially going to networking events and not doing coffee chats afterwards and like all of that stuff where people waste a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I did all of that. But actually, I think that's one of the things that makes me good at what I do because a lot of people are like, "Oh, you were just like born networking because you had like wealthy parents." Not actually, not
Mm-hmm.
actually it. It's a learned skill. It's something that you can improve on, even if you're like really super like amazing at it, have this amazing network. There's always ways that you can improve. It's never ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
agree.
that's
Awesome.
just
Thanks
my
for
little spiel there.
sharing.
I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add.
No, just I've enjoyed being here with you today, and if people are interested, they can reach out to me. I'm sure you're going to put some information below, and like I really love just helping people to build their relationships and feel better in themselves. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed having you.
Thank you.